Today, we are going to France and Mexico, so sit back as we go to the early 20th century. Marie-Louise Victorine Groues was born in Lyon, France, on the 24th of October, 1869. Like many young girls in France, her parents sent her to be educated by nuns in a local convent. It was here that she developed her love of literature. She loved to write stories and spent hours reading novels. Her father worked as a silk merchant and was often overseas for many weeks at a time looking for the best quality raw silks to transport back to France. Marie always took a keen interest in her father's work. She was always fascinated by the colours and the shine of the silks that he brought home, so it was no surprise that when she finished her education, she went to work with her father. Silk importing had become a very competitive business, especially after 1872 with the opening of the Suez Canal. Due to the canal, more raw silk was being imported to Europe, and Marie's father's business was not doing as well as in previous years. But Marie's father thought that her enthusiasm, energy, and charm could help the business prosper, and together they worked to restore the company's fortune. In 1892, Marie and her father traveled to Mexico. They wanted to take advantage of the opportunities there. Due to the development of steamships and railways, they could easily transport the beautiful fabrics they created in Mexico to Europe and America. Moreover, this allowed them to expand into buying and selling other materials. Their Mexican operation was based in the capital of the country, Mexico City. Marie loved life in Mexico, as it was an exciting place to be in the 1890s. It was being transformed under the presidency of Porfirio Díaz. He aimed to transform the capital city into a rival for the great European cities. To achieve this, he used Paris as a model, but made sure to keep the city's Mexican traditions. Marie was fascinated by the architecture and culture of the city, and was very happy living and working there. Not surprisingly, Marie soon attracted the attention of several wealthy young businessmen. She would often go out and spend romantic evenings with different admirers. It was even rumoured that one of these young men was so obsessed with her that he took his own life after being rejected. On one of her romantic outings, she was taken to an hacienda in a village outside of the city. The view from the town was remarkable, as it was towered over by the spectacular volcano of Popocatépetl. The young admirer wanted to impress her, but the couple failed to return from their trip. Later that evening, she was found by the local police, traumatized and crying. The young man whom she had gone out with was lying dead on the floor after being shot. Marie told the police that bandits had arrived, robbed them, and shot her young companion. It was known that there were bandits operating in the area, so the police believed what she had said and escorted her home as they were concerned for her safety. While working in Mexico, Marie met a French man named Paul Jacques. He was a very elegant, extremely articulate, and well-educated man. Like Marie's father, he also owned a very successful silk business, which operated in both Mexico and France. Marie liked the fact that he shared her love of literature, and they would regularly go out together. They would spend hours talking while strolling through the Chapultepec Park, and liked to listen to the mariachis in Coyoacán and Plaza Santa Cecilia. Marie enjoyed spending time with Paul, but her only reservation was that she was a young, attractive woman trying to help her father's business, and he was a wealthy businessman twice her age. As they continued to meet and enjoy each other's company, Paul eventually proposed to her and the couple married. Paul wanted to start a family and decided it would be best if they moved back to France. Soon, they went to live in Paris, and in 1904, Marie gave birth to a daughter that they named Paulette. Their marriage was going well, and Paul encouraged Marie to keep on writing. In order to share her writings with others and discuss her work with like-minded people, she formed a literary circle. The members of her new literary club were impressed with her work, and so she decided to continue writing using the pen name of Hera Martel. Her first romantic novel was soon published, and it was relatively successful. It sold various copies, and the publishers asked her to write more books. Marie's literary career under the name Hera Martel had begun. Her life as an author meant that she travelled around France and met new people from all walks of life. She also gained some financial independence from her husband. However, rumours soon started to circulate around the Paris literary establishment that Marie was often entertaining other men, and that her relationship with her husband was deteriorating. The couple were rarely seen out together socially, and Paul was happy to spend his time working rather than with his wife. Marie wanted to go back to Mexico. She thought that her literary talents would be appreciated there, and she had an idea of doing some promotional events. She very much liked to be in the limelight, so being the center of attention in some high society functions in Mexico's capital city very much appealed to her. Paul, however, refused her request and told her that she had to stay in Paris. He reminded her that she had a daughter and that she should try and spend more time with her. Marie started to feel that her husband was trying to restrict her literary talents. In January 1914, she prepared a bowl of soup for Paul and mixed in it a white powder. She then asked her maid to take the soup to her husband, who, like most nights, was working late in his study. Unbeknown to Marie, the maid saw her put the white powder in the soup. So, when she took it to the study, she said to her master, "I hope you like the flavouring that Madame put into your soup." Paul did not eat it. Instead, he took it to be analysed by a chemist. The results confirmed that the soup had been poisoned. However, for some reason, Paul did nothing. He did not confront his wife or report the incident to the authorities. He just went on as normal. Marie was still desperate to return to Mexico, and the relationship with her husband was getting worse. Then, on Sunday the 3rd of May, 1914, she frantically called the maid to come quickly to her bedroom. The maid ran to her mistress's room, and there, lying dead on the floor, was Paul. He had been shot. This was the second time that a man associated with Marie had been shot, as it happened years earlier in the hacienda in Mexico. The French authorities arrived and looked into the shooting. Beside the body was a note which looked remarkably like it had been written in the handwriting of the deceased. Marie told the police that Paul had been depressed and that his business was not doing very well. She said that she thought he shot himself to escape facing up to the shame of bankruptcy. When the police finished their investigation, they concluded that Paul Jacques had committed suicide. After a period of mourning, Marie and her daughter Paulette boarded a ship and went to Mexico. Even though Marie had longed to go back there, she needed to make the trip in order to sort out her late husband's Mexican business interests. She soon discovered that her husband's financial affairs were not in such a bad shape, and she received nearly 1 million francs from the sale of his Mexican assets and property. Not wanting to miss an opportunity, she also relaunched herself into Mexican society as a writer and novelist. She started to immerse herself in Mexico City's literary circles. She soon caught the attention of a man named Georges Besarabo. He was originally from Romania, and no one really knew how he made his money, but Marie was pleased that he was showing an interest in her, and they started to meet whenever possible. In 1916, Georges proposed, and Marie happily accepted. The couple married, and along with Marie's daughter, Paulette, they returned to France in 1916 and resettled back in Paris. Here, Marie continued to write and also promoted herself as a clairvoyant. She always liked to mix with creative people whose work she thought showed emotion, beauty, and power. So, she tried to associate herself with writers, painters, and musicians. Her marriage to Georges was not working, and she frequently found herself upset. Just like her marriage to Paul, she tried to dominate him, and they would often argue. Georges did not like her spending so much time with her friends, many of whom were male. But Marie had no intention of changing her social or business life, and just carried on regardless of her husband's feelings. On the 8th of July 1920, Georges returned to their Paris home to find Marie getting ready for a meeting with a male author. When he questioned her on why she was going out, Marie took a pistol from her bag and demanded that he leave her room. She then fired a shot to remind her husband that he should not question what she does. By now, Georges had had enough. His wife often displayed erratic behavior, and he feared for his safety. He told Marie that they should separate, but she didn't want to do that, as she relied on him to keep her in a nice Parisian neighborhood where they lived. She knew that his business dealings were not altogether legal, so she told him that if he left her, she would report him to the authorities. The couple continued to live together and continued to argue. All the staff became aware of the couple's marital issues. On July 31st, 1920, Georges and Marie had another argument, and not wanting to continue to argue with his wife, Georges went to bed. Sometime after he went to bed, and while he was still asleep, Marie took out her revolver and shot her husband. He died instantly. Marie then put the revolver on a nearby chair, climbed into bed, and went to sleep. The next morning, she got dressed, ate breakfast, and thought about what she could do with her husband's body. Her previous husband, Paul, had also died of a gunshot, but police declared that to be suicide, so could Georges have also taken his own life? She then came up with a better solution. Georges was known to have some shady business dealings, so it could have been that a dubious business associate had killed him. Marie took a chest to her bedroom and tried to place her husband's body in it, but it was too heavy for the petite Marie. In order to move it, she asked her daughter Paulette for assistance. Evidently, Paulette was shocked at what she saw, but after some persuasion from her mother, she helped her to move the body. They covered up the corpse with a raincoat and eventually managed to fit it in the chest. Afterwards, they went to a store to buy some rope and returned home to secure the chest. Together, they dragged it down the stairs and called a taxi, giving the driver instructions to take the chest to Gare de l'Est. From the station, it was to be transported to Nancy and would be delivered to an imaginary lady. Marie then tried to get rid of any evidence linking her to the crime. She washed and ironed all of the linen from the bed and burned the pillow in the kitchen stove. Then, along with her daughter, she went to a small lake near to where she lived and hired a small rowing boat. Once they were in the middle of the lake, she dropped the revolver and watched it slowly sink to the bottom. She then went home and, not wanting to draw attention to herself, just went about her daily routine. On the 4th of August 1920, the abandoned chest was discovered at Nancy railway station. The police opened it and were astonished to find that it contained a corpse. The police traced the chest back to Paris and soon established that it had come from Marie's residence, so they paid her a visit. They discovered that Marie had booked a trip back to Mexico for herself and Paulette. They interviewed people who knew Georges, and they all believed that just before he died, he had closed a large deal with a business operating in Mexico and France. Thanks to the deal, he had been paid hundreds of thousands of francs in commission. He deposited most of this money in a bank, but he had kept a few thousand francs in his wallet. Of course, when he was found, there was no money on his person, and his pocketbook with all of his dealings had also disappeared. Marie told the police that the culprit was probably one of his business associates, but the police did not believe her or her made-up story. Not only did they trace the chest back to the house, but they also found the shop where the string had been purchased. The police believed the evidence against her was very strong. When she was confronted with the facts and under police pressure, Marie made a full confession, telling the police all of the chilling tale. The police were shocked. It was as if she was reciting one of her novels, but she wasn't. This was real. She admitted to shooting her husband. The trial of Marie-Louise Victorine Groues began on the 15th of February 1921. Her daughter was also tried for the same crime. Both mother and daughter retracted the confessions that they had previously made to the police. Marie remained cool and dignified throughout the trial. She told the court that her husband had a mistress in Nancy and had left Paris because his business was failing. It was put to Marie that it was in fact her who had financial issues and not her husband. Toward the end of the trial, Paulette was worried that they were going to be found guilty. She knew that France still carried the death penalty, and because of this, Paulette announced to the court that she had to tell the truth. She went on to describe the events that took place on July 31st, 1920. She informed the court that it was her mother who shot her stepfather, and her crime was helping her hide the body. When the trial ended, Paulette's confession meant that she was released, but her mother was found guilty. She did, however, escape the death penalty and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Marie Groues died in 1930 while still serving her sentence. Thank you to everyone for listening to this video on Marie Groues, narrated by Forgotten Lives. If you enjoyed my narration, please check out my channel. I do narrations and videos on people throughout history, mainly 18th, 19th century history. So it would mean a lot if you could check out my channel and my videos. That's all from me and BC. So I will see you in the next briefcase.